Hello there. My name is Ian, and welcome to my YouTube channel. So today, once again, I'd like to introduce my guest, Jonathan Cornell from immersiveaudioalbum.com. And we are continuing our series of talking about all of the upcoming surround releases, this time for the month of November. Now, before we get into November, we do have a couple of updates on our last video where we covered September and October. But there was a couple of releases that kind of squeaked by us because, my goodness, I think we talked about 30 records on that video. The first one, this came out, I believe, just this week. And that's this David Gilmour Blu-ray. I think it's like Blu-ray, CD, probably a vinyl set. And this is live from the Luck and Strange tour. So, Jonathan, you got a chance to hear some of this. What did you think?
Yeah, so I listened to the Atmos mix on Apple Music because I don't have the Blu-ray in hand yet. I mean, of course, this depends on whether you're a fan of David Gilmour's like more recent solo albums, like of course Luck and Strange, and also the previous album Rattle That Lock. Mm-hmm. I mean, personally, I'm a big fan of both those albums. I like Rattle That Lock a little bit more than Luck and Strange. Rattle That Lock, I think, also has a better surround mix, if that's a factor. But I think he's in surprisingly good voice on this. I love his daughter is a great singer, and there's one song where she sings lead vocals. It's called Between 2 Points. That's probably the best song on the new album. And of course, he does the classics like Wish You Were Here and Breathe and Time. And for as far as the Atmos mix goes, it's pretty immersive for a live concert. I mean, this is not like a Steven Wilson mix where you can really pick out the different members of the band placed all around you, but it does fill up the entire room. It's kind of like the core band up on the front wall, and some of the more atmospheric bits like the keyboards or some rhythm guitar tend to be pushed out a little further into the room. And of course, there's sort of a good bit of ambience to it, but it sounds big and it's a great recording. So I think if you're a fan, like I said, of the last two solo albums and also classic Floyd, it's worth checking out.
I like the subtle nod to the Dark Side of the Moon with the moon shape there. And, I'm also thinking like imagery wise, like Live at Pompeii with the gong thing and the Roger Waters silhouette. So really clever implementation, I think, of some Pink Floyd iconography and mythology in there too. I haven't had a chance to check this out yet, but just looking at the set list, I know I was kind of curious to hear Fat Old Son because that's a track from the Atom Heart Mother album that he wrote and has revived. So that came out this week. It's cool to see Dave Gilmour, and Roger Waters just had a Blu-ray in the past couple of months. So it's cool to see these old guys still out there and performing. So last time around, we talked about how there was some speculation on the Quadio batch. And I'm not keeping track of your score, but how close did you get it?
Well, we guessed two of them. We guessed Hot Tune as America's Choice, which I've got the quadradisc here. Just to hear how that sounds like Ira's transfer from the master. And we also predicted War's Why Can't We Be Friends, which the previous unreleased quad mix. But the two we didn't talk about are America's Hearts, which you can see in the picture, and I've also got the LP here. And it's interesting, this was previously released also on an SACD by Audio Fidelity about 10 years ago. So this new Blu-ray is going to be the same mix, but probably a different tape transfer. So I think it'll probably sound a little bit different. Maybe it'll be better, maybe it'll be the same. I think this sounds pretty good, but it's out of print. And then Jefferson Starship Spitfire, which I don't have the record of, but I think that completes the Jefferson Starship collection because they already did Red Octopus and Dragonfly, or the other two albums that were released in quad. And there's also another America album called Holiday that they already released the quad mix of on a Blu-ray in a previous batch. So the one that's exciting to me is the War album because it has some of their most famous songs, Lowrider and Why Can't We Be Friends, and it's a previously unreleased quad mix. So I'm really curious how that's going to sound.
All right, so that gets us caught up on the month of October. I'm sorry, we've got one more October release.
One more squeaking its way in.
Yeah, one more just squeaking its way in. And this comes out on Halloween. And this is Christopher Holt, Across the Milky Way, available through immersiveaudioalbum.com. And Jonathan, tell us about this mixer. Who did this work anyway?
Well, this is a bit of shameless self-promotion on my part because I had the opportunity to mix this record in Atmos, and I'm very proud of the results. And you've heard it, Ian, and you can attest that. I think it sounds pretty good.
It sounds great. And what was my comment? It's like the overview on ukulele.
Yeah, I'm sure that that Chris and his manager will love that comment. But to give people just a little bit of context about this, Christopher Holt, if you've not heard of him, he's a musician based out in the Dallas area, and he's been involved in tons of studio and live projects. Most notably, he's played in Mike Campbell's band, The Dirty Knobs, Mike Campbell from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and he played on Don Henley's last solo record. It's called Cass County. And right now, he's the new lead guitarist in the Eagles. So if you go see the Eagles at the Sphere in Vegas, he's their lead guitarist.
So he's filling in for Joe Walsh? Is that?
So there's a whole complicated history. Originally, the two guitar players were Don Felder and Joe Walsh. Right. Hotel California era. They were the ones who did like the dueling solos in Hotel California. And then at some point, they fired Don Felder around like the year 2000 and replaced him with this guy, Stuart Smith. And if you get that the farewell tour live from Melbourne Blu-ray, which we talked about in the live albums video, that Elliot Shiner mix, you'll see Stuart Smith on that. But I think Stuart Smith ended up leaving the band last year because of like health issues or something, or he just wanted to retire after being with them for so long. So that's the part that Chris is filling in.
And this, he's very influenced by the Beatles and Andy Partridge, from what I gather, because I watched a little bit of his interview that's on YouTube.
Yeah, so this solo record, it's very dense. Like there's a lot of stacked harmony vocals, there's a lot of, multi-track guitars and keyboards. It's a perfect record for Atmos, which is part of the reason why I think they kind of approached me with the idea of doing it. And like you said, I think there's a lot of kind of like later era XTC in it, like kind of like the None Such album. I hear some of that. And also like all that kind of great like Southern California stuff, like the Eagles or Jackson Browne, Little Feat, bands like that. So if any of that sounds like it's up your alley, please do check this out when it comes out on the 31st. And we're also looking at potentially doing a streaming release at some point in addition to the download.
Well, I think, and folks who are watching this can let me know in the comments, I think it would be really interesting to do a conversation with you about the creation of this Atmos mix, because I've never had the honor of actually talking with somebody who's created an Atmos mix. So, people, if you're watching this, let me know if that's something you'd want to see, because I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'd be glad to do it.
So there's a bunch of Jimi Hendrix stuff coming out on November 7th. And perhaps the biggest news is this Axis Bold as Love boxed set, which does contain a Dolby Atmos mix of the Axis Bold as Love album. Now, as you were saying, this comes from a 4-track recording, right?
Yeah. So as far as I know, like from interviews with Eddie Kramer, who of course, mixed these albums and was closely involved in, I wouldn't say, was he the producer? I mean, I think Jimi kind of was the producer, but he was closely involved in the making of these albums and he mixed them. But apparently the first two albums, Are You Experienced and Axis, were recorded at Olympic Studios in London. And at the time, I think their workflow was kind of like Sgt. Pepper era Beatles. Like they had 2 4-tracks and they would kind of bounce between them. Like they would fill up one 4-track, then mix all that down to mono on another 4-track so they could keep stacking things. So provided that they have the original like first generation masters where all the parts are separate, there should be a sufficient amount of material to do a decent surround mix. If you listen to the stereo mixes of Axis, they're more complex than the ones for Are You Experienced? Like the drums are in stereo instead of just on one side. But they're still like a little weird. Like there's a couple of songs where Jimmy's voice is on like one side. Some people would probably say that the mono mix, which I'm not sure if it's included on the box set, but there was an Analog Productions SACD that has the mono mix of Axis that came out a few years ago. So some purists might say that's like the most true version of what they were going for. But I think with Jimmy's stuff, like the stereo panning and things moving around was definitely intentional and what he wanted. So, I mean, this is, a truly classic record, and I'm very curious how it's going to sound in Atmos, though I'm a little bit dubious of how good it's going to be based on the limited source.
Well, I was just looking as you were talking, and the Blu-ray disc contains the Dolby Atmos mix, and it also contains the 1976 original stereo mix, as well as the original monaural mix.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, and I'm a huge Jimi Hendrix fan. As a friend of mine says, Jimi Hendrix was mixing in Atmos even when he was mixing in mono. So when you listen to a mono Jimi Hendrix mix, it's going to fill your room. And I have to say, when you mentioned the Analog Productions releases, there have been a few times when I've been extremely tempted by those. Because if you listen to the remasters of the Hendrix catalog, they're a bit brick-walled. So I would be curious just to hear uncompressed versions as these have advertised, if they're in fact not mastered heavily, of course. But personally, I won't be picking this up because, my goodness, I'm just spending in all kinds of different directions and I'm out of room for box sets. But I am really excited that we're going to get a couple of Jimi standalone releases, and I hope this sets a precedent for perhaps a Axis standalone Blu-ray in the future, because I would certainly buy it in the $23, $24 range. And here's a mix that's been on streaming for years. And this was one of the very first Atmos mixes I ever heard. So I've got a lot of nostalgia connected to this particular mix. But I'm very happy that this is coming out. This is Electric Ladyland, the Atmos mix from Eddie Kramer. Now, you were talking about there was a 5.1 of this that came out on a box set a couple years ago.
Yeah, so in 2018, so I got it in front of me here, there was this nice deluxe book edition with, apparently this is like the original cover art that Jimi wanted for this album.
Yeah.
And the record company had other ideas. Particularly, have you ever seen the UK cover for Electric Ladyland?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah. Well, so there's this 3-disc edition that has like the remastered stereo. It's got, I think, a live set, and there's the Blu-ray with Kramer's 5.1 mix. And the 5.1 mix of this is certainly interesting. It's very unconventional, which is kind of befitting because Electric Ladyland is also kind of an unconventional stereo mix. But last time I listened to it, as I recall, the drums are mostly in the back, and Jimi's voice is kind of like in the middle of the room, omnipresent in all the speakers.
Yeah.
It's like interesting. I think most of the album was recorded apparently using a 12-track machine, which was like a prototype that they had at the studio in New York, except for the 2 singles, Crosstown Traffic and All Along the Watchtower. Those songs were recorded on 4-track at Olympic, like the other albums. So I was a little disappointed at first that the mixes on like the hit songs that I knew weren't quite as good as the others, but that's just kind of the nature of the source material.
Yeah.
But the sound quality of this, it's very good. Like, it's not brick wall. The EQ is good. And the Atmos mix, which came out on Apple Music like a year or 2 ago, like a while ago.
It's been at least 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that's another step up from this. So I'm curious to hear how it's going to sound on Blu-ray.
Yeah, I have this on order. There's no way that I wouldn't order this album because it's one of my very favorites, period. And I'm, as I said, Jimi Hendrix music is just made for multi-channel. I think he was thinking in that direction even back then, just based on some of his panning choices and things he was experimenting with. So also on November 7th, we have this concert. This is the Jimi Hendrix Experience, Los Angeles Forum, April 26th, 1969. I think that's what it says. The type is very small. But yeah. Okay. So is this on streaming already? I haven't heard it.
I'm not sure. There is a live release on streaming, like it's like live in Hawaii or something. Maybe I have that wrong. This I'm not entirely sure if it's on streaming, but I mean, my thinking on this was like, it's a standalone, so maybe I'll check it out anyway. But for a Atmos mix of a vintage live recording, I'm not sure how much scope there is to do something really kind of immersive and interesting. Yeah. Unless, of course, we're talking about like the Steven Wilson mixes of Made in Japan or Live at Pompeii. But I think those are kind of exceptions rather than the rule.
Yeah, and I just looked at it. It is on streaming in Atmos, so
okay.
We're gonna have to go check this out. And for any of you who are interested, who have access to Apple Music, you should go check it out too, because this is like 2 weeks away. And we're going to get both of these standalones, and you can basically have these for under $50. So to me, that's a great deal when we're talking about multi-channel music on physical media. And again, like I might just grab it just to have some live Hendrix in my collection, because I think there is a 5.1 live Hendrix album that I already have, but it might be kind of more ambient mics or something like that. You might be more familiar with it.
Well, I know for sure the only studio album that had a 5.1 mix was Electric Ladyland.
This is Jimi live at Berkeley. Yeah, Berkeley Community Theater, Saturday, May 30th, 1970. And there's a film, and then there's an audio-only concert as an extra.
Oh, let me actually correct the record for a second, because there is a 5. I don't have it, but there's a 5.1 release that came out last year called Electric Lady Studios that basically has 5.1 mixes of like basically everything he recorded after Electric Ladyland.
Oh, very nice.
It has songs like, like Easy Rider and Freedom. The posthumous release, they called it First Rays of the New Rising Sun.
Yes.
And there's also an Atmos mix of that on Apple Music, which is not in the box set. So that would be a good one for them to do a standalone.
Yeah, hopefully these Jimi releases sell extremely well, because I would love to hear more of this stuff. But yeah, just to mention, there is this previously issued 5.1 mix, but I don't remember much about it. I'm thinking it's mostly an ambient, like audience mics in the back sort of situation, because we're talking about a trio, a live trio, so there's limitations really to what they can do. So this is also on November 7th. This is Paul McCartney and Wings, mixed by Giles Martin and Steve Orchard. Do you want to tell us about this release? This is a SDE exclusive.
I think you can also get it from the McCartney site. So it's a kind of like a greatest hits collection. It has like somewhere in the realm of like 20 to 30 songs from across the various Wings albums mixed in Atmos. So I guess this is sort of a good opportunity to talk about a little bit of the history of McCartney stuff that's come out in surround. So in the 70s, there were 2 albums that were released on 8-track in quad, which were Venus and Mars and Band on the Run.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the 90s, there were these DTS CD editions, which I've got here, that use the quad mixes. The Venus and Mars one is like an awful transfer, kind of like we talked about Santana's Abraxas in the quad video. Very much the same idea. The Band on the Run one, I think, sounds pretty good. So you have these, which are like the quads sort of stealthily reissued and calling them 5.1, but they're really the quad mixes. And then during the early 2000s, there was this DVD set called The McCartney Years, which I believe has 3 DVDs on it. And it has all the songs that have like music videos. So, it has like that song he did with Michael Jackson, Say, Say, Say. It has the track he did with Stevie Wonder, like pretty much throughout McCartney's entire career, not just Wings. It's got like Maybe I'm Amazed. And the 5.1 mixes on this were done by Paul Hicks, who's done like all the recent Lennon and Harrison stuff in Atmos. And the 5.1 mixes on this are really good. Like the tracks from Band on the Run and Venus, I would say they sound better than the quad DTS versions. And then in more recent years, we've had on streaming services, a couple of the albums have been released in Atmos, mixed by Giles Martin, which are Band on the Run, Venus and Mars, Red Rose Speedway. And I think there's one more. Oh, there's like the self-titled McCartney albums, like McCartney 1, McCartney 2, McCartney 3. So I suspect this box set is just going to be a composite of like those existing mixes. Like the tracks from Band on the Run are going to be the same ones that are on streaming now. But it also has a bunch of songs from albums that haven't been released in surround yet, like Wings at the Speed of Sound. So I think this is really exciting because it's a standalone edition and it's not a huge box set. It's got, tons of classic McCartney stuff on it. The Atmos mixes of Band on the Run and Venus and Mars are quite good. I did a review of the Band on the Run Atmos for IAA, which we can put in the comments, where I compared it with the DTS version. And I concluded that the Atmos mix was better. I think. So personally, I'm excited about this because I like a lot of solo McCartney. You know, it's feel good stuff. It's cool. So yeah.
Well, between this and the John Lennon set, which came out in October, I'd say Beatles solo fans are eating well when it comes to multi-channel mixes. So what's this date? So this is Queens of the Stone Age, also on November 7th. And this is Alive in the Catacombs. Now, this is going to be an IAA exclusive. So you want to tell us about this?
Yeah. So this was recorded. It's a live album that was recorded like in the French catacombs, like underneath Paris. And it's more of like a stripped down acoustic kind of thing, which if you're familiar with Queens of the Stone Age, it's typically like more of a, you know, heavy rock kind of thing.
Yeah.
So this is more of like a stripped down acoustic kind of piece. And I've listened to it on Apple Music. Of course, I have the digital files for the IA release, but it's a pretty like immersive mix. You know, it's pretty static. Like there's no instruments flying around for this kind of solo acoustic performance, but it does feel like you're in the middle of the band. It's got kind of a spooky atmosphere to it because of course
it would. Yeah.
And you know, I've always been a big fan of the band. I love Josh Homme's voice. So yeah, this is a cool release, and I'm hoping like they'll go back and do some of the earlier albums.
Yes,
like that you know, like Songs for the Deaf would be incredible in a surround mix. So yeah, excited to have it up on IAA. We also have the previous solo, the studio record that's called In Times New Roman. The Atmos mix of that has been up on IA for the last like year or so. So yeah, very excited to have it.
You know, I might just snag this. I've been contemplating, you know, finally dipping into the IAA world. But just your description of this and the fact that it was recorded underground, it's like, oh, I have to hear this.
It's really cool. Yeah.
So this is coming out November 14th. So now we're talking about a week later. And this is Split Ends ENZyclopedia volumes 1 and 2. And this is part of a massive reissue campaign of those early Split Ends records. And my friend Larry Shore, who I've had on the channel a couple of times, he was a concert photographer in the 70s. He photographed many of these great bands that we talk about on this channel, including Split Ends in their very early days. And I believe what happened was they recorded the album, and then when they did the second record, they re-recorded a lot of it and then added stuff to it. And that's why it's volumes 1 and 2, is because the two albums are related. And I think what you get here are high-res stereo versions of both albums, but you get Atmos versions of the second record only. And this band is very quirky in kind of an early Genesis sort of way, but they're also influenced by the punk era and new wave. And so there's like a theatrical element to it, but then there's also kind of like an edgy, like punk aesthetic to it as well. And if any of my viewers know the band Cardiacs, I feel like these guys are very much like the Australian forerunner of Cardiacs. And I would recommend them if you like quirky progressive music. Personally, I didn't get a chance to order this. That's the problem with these SDE exclusives is, you know, you would know better than me, but I feel like they put the pre-orders up and print exactly what they need. And once they sell out, they sell out. So unless this is on streaming, I don't think I'll get a chance to hear it.
I think it probably will be on streaming. But the strategy with the SDE releases, originally it was kind of like they would tell you up front, like, we're only printing like 2,000 or 3,000 copies, and it would be like a mad rush to order them. But the new strategy, which I think is more fair to fans, is kind of like they'll say, we have the pre-order open for 2 weeks.
Yeah. So
you have 2 weeks to decide whether you want to order this. And then once it's over, like it's over, and we only print as many as we got orders for.
Yeah.
So I do think that's a more fair strategy. But as we talked about, you know, in the last month's video, like there have been a lot of these announced, like over the last like month and a half. We're going to talk about a couple more of them in the video. So I don't know. I guess of course they're shipping from England. So for people like us in the US, the shipping is it's considerable on these.
Yeah,
so
it's an investment.
And competing with all the other things that are being announced. I don't know,
Yeah.
it gets to the point where you just can't pick up everything. But I'm curious about this myself because I'm familiar with Neil Finn's this, which was Crowded House.
Yes.
First Crowded House is one of my favorite albums ever. So if what you're saying about this is true, I heard the albums, that it's more of like a kind of quirky early Genesis kind of thing, that seems like it would be up my alley.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think you would enjoy it. I really enjoy the song, especially Amy, My Darling, which is a track from the first record. So when we get finished here, go listen to Amy, My Darling. That song is a total blast. But speaking of SDE exclusives, this is one that personally I'm really excited for, and that's Tears for Fears songs from the Big Chair. And I want to take this opportunity to correct a huge mistake I made when I made my announcement video on this, and everybody yelled at me for it, possibly justifiably so. But I assumed that the packaging for this would be the same as the Roxy Music Avalon release. And that is not true. It's in a regular Scanova, I think they call them, case like this, where it's like
the regular, like in the picture, the high fidelity pure audio, like the clear Blu-ray cases. Yeah,
exactly. Which I just assumed was a placeholder. So I screwed up on that. I just want to take the opportunity to right my wrong. Forgive me for my sins, please. Yeah, let's talk about songs from the Big Chair. So you've heard this mix on streaming, right?
It's kind of funny that the packaging is like this, because the previous edition of this as a standalone Blu-ray had the exact same packaging from 2014. Yeah. Yeah. So as a lot of people may already know, Steven Wilson mixed this album before in 2014 for the last round of reissues. And there was a box set with a DVD audio, which I've got in front of me. You can see it says 5.1 songs for the Big Chair on it. Mm-hmm. There's like a kind of like a Jethro Tull size box that this came in. Similar to the one for back there. Similar to the one for Seeds of Love.
Yeah, it's not really a Jethro Tull style box. It's closer to, if you folks have the Deep Purple Made in Japan box. And also they did the Seeds of Love exactly like this.
Seeds of Love one is like a little bit thinner, and it's annoying when you look at them at the shelf. They're not the same size. But so for context, these new edition, the mixes are all new. So he went back to the original tape transfers and remixed it from scratch. So there's a new 2025 stereo mix, 2025 5.1 mix, and the Atmos mix, much like with the King Crimson reissues.
Yes.
So the Atmos mix, like, very quietly appeared on streaming earlier this year, like in February or March. So it's been up there all this time, and there was like no announcement about it or anything. I mean, I know Steven didn't post about it on Facebook when it came out. The record company didn't say anything, which is like strange, but you could listen to it on Apple Music. And if you thought the 5.1 from 2013 was good, I mean, holy crap, man. Like, that Atmos mix is crazy. Like in Shout, like those interesting, like eerie synths are mostly in the height speakers, whatever that's called, that Fairlight instrument, I think they call it. There's a lot of guitar parts in the side speakers. The final track, Listen, is really amazing in Atmos with all the different like synths moving around. Sometimes there's vocals that come out of the top. It's a really, really aggressive mix, and I think it is an improvement over the previous 5.1 mix. So very excited to hear this on Blu-ray. And I hope we get Seeds of Love too, because that's my favorite of the three original records.
And that's another album, Seeds of Love, that was just too big to be contained in a stereo mix. And much like the Lizard album, which is coming out today, I need to go check my mailbox. The Lizard album's coming out today. It's one of those albums that I think really would lend itself to Atmos. So I'm excited for this. I didn't think twice about it. So this is also on November 14th. And this is a 4 CD Blu-ray box set of the Rolling Stones album Black and Blue. And, I'll be honest, I don't know anything about the Rolling Stones, so I'm going to turn this over to you. But I think it's so exciting to see Steven Wilson going from like these cult remix projects to doing the freaking Rolling Stones. Like, oh my God, that's a big deal.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. Even if this is perhaps not their most famous record, like their most famous albums, you think of like Sticky Fingers or like Let It Bleed. But I think this is a great record, and it's got very much kind of like a reggae thing going on throughout it.
Interesting.
And like any classic Stones is good Stones, that's how I feel about it. And I think it's exciting that they got him to do this, because the Stones have kind of a weird history with doing multi-channel stuff. So during the early 2000s, basically the whole catalog was released on SACD, but only in stereo. So for whatever reason, they didn't do multi-channel mixes, except they released this very odd SACD single that just has the song Sympathy for the Devil mixed in 5/1. And it's quite a good mix. It has the original version and like a couple of like remix versions with modern overdubs, which I don't like at all. But there is a 5/1 mix of the original Sympathy for the Devil song on this disc, which is really cool. And then once we get into kind of the Atmos era, there's a mix of stuff that's only on streaming and on Blu-ray. So to date, the only vintage album that's had a full remix in Atmos is Goat's Head Soup, which came out in 2020. And this is a Giles Martin mix. This is just the Blu-ray. The box set is in my closet behind me. But this is like an okay mix. I think it's kind of like it's all right. It's not awful, but it's not like incredible either. Yeah. And then there's a Atmos version of Tattoo You on Apple Music, which is like, it just sounds like glorified stereo, like all the instruments in the front and just echoes in the other ones. And then their newest album, Hackney Diamonds, which I don't have the box set of, there is a Blu-ray edition of that. And by all accounts, that's supposed to be a pretty solid mix. I think you can hear it on streaming too. That's also a Giles Martin mix. But I think it's a pretty big deal that they got Steven to do this and that it's coming out on Blu-ray. And I'm curious, if it leads to more, if he gets to do the rest of the catalog.
I'm guessing this was a record company decision to reach out to Wilson. Like they probably just said, hey, this guy's mixes sell and they're critically well received. Let's approach him. But, from what you're mentioning to me, it seems like another example of Steven taking on an album that's unusual. It's sort of like the Blues for Allah thing, where, I was talking about how Wilson tends to work on stuff that he likes. So his projects tend to be curated. And so, yeah, I would be curious to hear this, but gee, I'm just, I'm not hardcore enough. I need to dig in some Stones first before I go for something like this.
Again, like I'm pretty optimistic this will end up on streaming too. Yeah. So you'll be able to listen to it. But like I said, the previous Stones surround stuff like has been kind of a mixed bag. So, I'm curious to see what, the best guy in the business does with their music.
I won't tell Bruce Sword you said that. Okay, so this is also November 14th. The Archaeoptimist by Spock's Beard, mixed by Rich Mauser. And curiously, this is coming out on CD and DVD, not a Blu-ray. And there is no Atmos mix. It's a 5.1 mix only. And
don't see many of those anymore.
No, you don't. Gee, I wish we would have had Brockway on, because Brockway is the Spock's Beard. He's obsessed with Spock's Beard.
And wouldn't you know it, Brockway's here through the power of editing. Hi guys, how's it going? How you doing?
Conquered temporal challenges to bring Brockway here to tell us all about the new Spock's Beard album. So take it away, Cody.
We have crossed seas and borders to get Brockway on the video here. I'm excited for this. Yeah, I mean, I like what they've been doing. Obviously, I'm a huge Spock's Beard fan, in particular the old stuff. Obviously, with Neil Morris going back to the V album and For Kindness of Strangers or The Kindness of Strangers, sorry. Those old records. But I followed them kind of loosely, even with the Nick DiVirgilio fronted stuff. They have some really great records with him, like Feel Euphoria. And then Ted Leonard becomes the singer, and Nick DiVirgilio kind of becomes the drummer again. He was doing the Phil Collins excuse me, he's doing the Phil Collins double duty thing. Genesis are his favorite band. That's fairly obvious. So he's not on this record. There's a new guy by the name of Nick Potters who's on drums, and I'm sure he's great because these guys are all excellent musicians. I believe Alan Morse is still on this. Ryo Akimoto is Spock's Beard is kind of his thing these days. But Ted Leonard, that guy is kind of everywhere now. He's doing the pattern-seeking animal stuff and doing the Spock's Beard stuff, and this record is going to be exceptional. I know it is. The single was good. The single is called Invisible. That's already out. The CD vinyl stuff comes out November 21st. So I'm really excited to hear this because I liked Noise Floor a lot. That was the last one they did, 2018. So 7 years for a new record.
Wow.
Yeah. But Ian, I don't know if you've heard Noise Floor. It's an exceptional album. It's very good. And actually one of the songs that is on that ended up as well on the new Pattern Seeking Animals record that came out earlier this year. Yeah, I don't know what the deal is with that. I think it was a bonus track for Noise Floor, but it ended up resurfacing on the new PSA album, and it is very good. And so that album was exceptional. I love that record. There's a song on there called Somebody's Home. Oh, man. Ted could sing the phone book, and it would give you chills. He's just a great singer. And so I'm excited to see what they come up with on this album, too.
Yeah. And I think this is the first Spock's Beard album to get a proper surround mix. What are your feelings on Rich Mauser as an engineer and just a mixing engineer, I suppose?
Well, he's certainly got a sound. Everything that Neil Morse does, for the most part, is still like going back to the Spock's Beard days. He was the producer for V and all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he had a hand in doing that stuff. Sorry, my nose is itchy.
It's all good, man. So he's a producer as well as a mixing and mastering engineer.
He's in everything. And he's kind of Neil Morse's right-hand man. And so it's nice to see that even though Neil is not in Spock's Beard for over 23 years at this point, that he's still very involved with the band. But yeah, he's based out of LA. Unfortunately, like you and I were talking about a little bit ago, he lost his studio last year to the LA fires. Which was very unfortunate. But yeah, Flying Colors records there, Spock's Beard records there, Neil Morse records there. Basically, that sort of legion of American progressive rock, he's kind of got a hold on. And so he makes great sounding records. I mean, all you have to do really is go back and listen to the V album, because like I know I keep referencing that, but it is such an amazing album. Every time I've met Nick DiVirgilio, I've gone on about how brilliant that record is.
Now, my question is, has Rich Mauser done any other surround work prior to this? Has he done mixes for Transatlantic or Neil Morse?
So this is the Transatlantic surround sound DVD that he did back 3-4 years ago. 2021 already. Wow. The Absolute Universe 5.1 mix, the ultimate version. That's what this is called. Yeah. So Rich Mauser does the 5.1 mix of this.
Okay. So it's got a good mix. Would you say?
Yes, absolutely. It's very clear. Ian, have you listened to this before, the album?
I've not listened to them since the Whirlwind album.
Oh,
that was the last one I bought. Yeah.
Well, you're only missing two, but they're two really good ones. Kaleidoscope and this one. And so if you can, I don't know if you could still get this DVD, but if you can, every one of you watching this should try and get it. And so this new Spock's Beard is going to be exceptional. Yeah, Rich Mauser, that everything that I've heard him produce is very clean and dynamic and slick and very nicely done. Yeah, he does good work, and the proof is in the pudding,
Yeah.
Good stuff.
I mean, the things I can add is that it's a Snapper Music release, so potentially there could be an IA download of this at some point.
Okay.
I haven't personally discussed it with my contacted the label yet, but that could be a possibility. And I know Rich Mauser has done a couple of other 5.1 mixes. Most recently, he did the there's that Transatlantic record. If you're familiar with Transatlantic, they're like a super group with, I think there's someone from Marillion and there's somebody from
Pete Travavis, and I nailed his pronunciation 10 months ago when I did the video, but yeah, it's Pete, the bass player from Marillion. It's Neil Morse, formerly of Spock's Beard, Mike Portnoy, formerly and then later currently of Dream Theater, and Roy Stolt of the Flower Kings, and I think that's everybody.
And there's also a record by Liquid Tension Experiment, which is another prog supergroup. There's that Rich Mauser did the 5-1 of. So I guess he's definitely like a prog kind of guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're one of those bands like where I know the name, but I'm not like personally familiar with any of the records or songs. But I know, having sort of observed the fan community, they're one of those prog bands that people have been saying for years, like, why don't you release your stuff in surround? Like, I know people were saying that about Marillion for years, and then they finally ended up doing this huge reissue campaign. So I think this is cool. Like, I guess they're kind of dipping their toe in the water because it's a new album and it's easier to do a surround mix of this than to go back and try and rebuild one of the older records. But I'm curious how it does for them, because it seems like there is an appetite in the community for 5-1 Atmos mixes of their back catalog.
This is very 10 years ago, but I like it. I would like to see more bands pick up on this idea of just standalone packages, CD, DVD, because I miss the days when I bought, let's say, Hand Cannot Erase on release day, and it was $20. And I had the option of CD and DVD, or CD and Blu-ray, standalone CD, vinyl, box set. Now they make you buy every component parts, usually for new releases. So it's nice to see somebody return to this release model. And I'm guessing that since I tend to talk about a lot of prog rock stuff, that somebody in my viewer, my audience, is going to be all about this. So yeah, it's a cool release. Now, we're now moving ahead to the 21st of November. This is Fine Young Cannibals with The Raw and the Cooked.
Yeah, so this is another kind of classic, sort of 80s synth pop type of record. I bet you've heard the song on the radio at some point, She Drives Me Crazy. That's kind of their signature song, Fine Young Cannibals. But my main interest in this release is that David Costin did the Atmos mix for it. And I've really enjoyed, all the mixes he's done so far, like Thompson Twins' Into the Gap, Tubular Bells, Paul Young's No Parlay. So I ended up ordering this really because I quite enjoy that one track. I think that's a classic like 80s hit, and I really like his mixing. So I think this is going to be a good one.
Yeah, that was enough for me to order the Frankie Goes to Hollywood disc. It's like, yeah, I like Relax. Steven Wilson did the mixing. Sure, I'm in.
Same idea. Yep.
Yeah, but it seems like SDE is kind of at the forefront of mixing these 80s synth pop records. This seems to be the niche that they're occupying right now, and it's cool. I'm here for it. There's a lot of atmosphere and space in those albums, and as many as I can afford and I'm interested in, I'll check out. Personally, I didn't order this because I'd never heard of it before, and if I'd heard that hit song, I probably don't recognize it by name.
I'll give you the lowdown when it gets here.
I appreciate that. So this is on the same day, correct? This is the 21st. This is Thin Lizzy with Nightlife. Another SDE surround series standalone Blu-ray, this time mixed by Richard Whitaker, who my subscribers might know as the guy who mixed Bridge of Sighs by Robin Trower. So he seems to be, again, cornering this niche of like hard rock albums.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
And this is like the third or fourth Thin Lizzy album he's done. So there's the release history of them is a little confusing. So there was Vagabonds of the Western World, which was like not an SDE exclusive, but it is a standalone Blu-ray. And then there was a double essay. The SDE edition was 2 albums on one Blu-ray. Jailbreak and Johnny the Fox, which has the songs I think that personally I knew by them, which are Jailbreak and The Boys Are Back in Town, is like their probably most famous song. So I do have that one, not in front of me though, and I thought the mixes on it were pretty nice. The Boys Are Back in Town, the harmonies are in the rear. In the case of this record, I think the multi-track tapes were not complete for it, so it's like an Atmos mix of like 3/4 of the album. I don't know if they just like left the other songs off or if they use Pentio or something to upmix them. But great band. I think if you liked the prior Thin Lizzy surround editions, this one is probably worth checking out too. This is another one that like we were talking about, I skipped just because you can't get all the SDE releases.
No, you can't do all of it. Although some people have kind of strategized and ordered them all together so that they can save on shipping. But the downside is that you don't get them on release date. They ship whenever the last one is available. So there are some strategies you can do if you want to try to have a comprehensive overview of their releases. But, for me, I want them as close to release date as possible because I want to cover it for YouTube. So I have to be really picky and choosy when it comes to their stuff. But they do a wonderful job. There's nothing against their work at all.
You have to admire like this thing they've built. I mean, it started with that new Tears for Fears record, and now we're like 50 releases in.
Wow.
Like, these things are being announced every 2 weeks. So I think
I didn't realize that.
It goes to show that there is an audience for this stuff.
Yes.
I mean, you and I know it, your viewers know it, but it's great that the record companies see that too.
Yeah, I feel like a frog caught in a hailstorm when it comes to these SDE announcements. And sometimes I open my mailbox and I have like a traumatic response, like, oh my God, what's next? What's this going to be? What am I going to need it? What's going on? But we're glad to have them. It's wonderful that people are doing this for physical media and keeping this stuff alive on disc, because this is the best it's going to sound, in my opinion. And if you really care about audio quality, you want to get the Blu-ray. So this is another new release from a modern group, Snarky Puppy and Metropole Orkest. What's that called? Somni?
Somni, yeah.
Somni. This was mixed by Nick Hard. And I am familiar a little bit with Snarky Puppy because I had a couple of their albums a few years ago. And they were, those albums, I don't know if this is the same, but those albums were cool because they did the whole records live.
Yeah.
And you got the video and the full audio production in back then 5.1. But this is like jazz rock with like a bit of an orchestral bent. And I want to mention that this Metropole Orkest is a really interesting orchestra because they've worked with two members of Frank Zappa's bands.
Oh.
Steve Vai did a Metropole Orkest album, and so did Mike Keneally. So very, very cool collaboration here.
To me, it's kind of a throwback to like that sort of Headhunters era of jazz fusion with maybe a little like more of a harder rocking edge. But if you like that kind of stuff, and they've had a couple of albums that have been mixed in Atmos now. So the first one was their newest record, Empire Central, before this one. Mm-hmm. There was a streaming only Atmos release when the record first came out. And then later on, they did this standalone Blu-ray edition, which has the video on it as well. Mm-hmm. And the way they recorded this album, and I think some of the others, is it was done in front of a live audience, but the audience were silent and all wearing headphones. So you get this you get this effect, like it has the sound quality of a studio recording, but the energy of the band playing off each other live. So this is a really, really cool release. And they also went back and they did two of the older records in Atmos. One of them is called Silva, which also has the Metropole Orkest, however you say it. And that was
from Holland. I think it's a Netherlands orchestra.
The Silva album was originally released in like 2013 or 2012, so it was like a 10th anniversary reissue. And then there's another album called We Like It Here, which for now is streaming only, but I think eventually there will be a Blu-ray.
And that's the record that I had, was We Like It Here.
Yeah. So I'm excited that they're doing another album where the Atmos is being released with it live on release day and on Blu-ray. Mm-hmm. And like we were talking about the Hendrix stuff, like I think this was like $25 and it's available through most outlets. So if you like this kind of jazz fusion, I think it's a no-brainer. Yeah. The mixes have all been really good, really aggressive, lots of the band all around you. So yeah.
This kind of music is just perfect for that format, in my opinion. So I'm kind of interested in this myself. I mean, I only learned about it today, but I'm kind of interested in hearing it now.
And there's no time crunch on it, like with the SDE stuff. Like the Empire Central one was released like a year and a half ago and you could still get it. So yeah. So this is also on the 21st. Yes. And this is Nektar's A Tab in the Ocean. And this was mixed by Ben Wiseman and is included on a 4 CD/Blu-ray boxed set. 5.1 mix only, no Atmos mix for this. And this continues a series of Nektar releases, starting with Remember the Future and I think Journey to the Center of the Eye
may have come out earlier this year or not last year. I have to confess that I haven't heard any of these mixes, but I am a Nektar fan. I saw them live at Prog Day a couple years ago and kind of met the band and stuff. And even though I think they are down maybe to one original member or no original members, they're still great live. And when I saw them, they did the entire Remember the Future record at Prog Day. So that was a lot of fun. But I have to confess, I have not heard any of Ben Wiseman's multi-channel work, but I do think he is a great engineer, like as a mastering engineer. So I'm kind of curious. I don't know this record. I'm sure that my subscribers are like, "What? You don't know Nektar? Tab in the Ocean?" And they're quickly hitting the unsubscribe button. But I'm sorry, I can't know everything. But this is all just to say that I would be curious to hear it. But personally, I think I would like to hear Remember the Future first.
Well, funny enough, I think we were engaging with a commenter on one of our other videos where we were talking about how some of the Nektar albums were released in quad in the 70s. Certainly, Remember the Future had a quad mix. And there was a SACD of it released probably 20 years ago that used a transfer of the quad. And the recent box set also has the quad mix on it. So, I mean, this is a, cherry red esoteric release. And I think it's great they continue to sort of do this niche of prog stuff, like Hawkwind and Renaissance. Camel, exactly. And to your point about Ben Wiseman, the only mix of his that I've heard is Renaissance's Turn to the Cards, which was a case where like some of the multi-tracks were lost. So I think he only mixed like 3 or 4 songs in 5/1. And I thought it was a pretty solid mix. I thought the Stephen W. Taylor mix of the other Renaissance album was better.
Yeah.
What's that album called? Like Azure d'Or, I think is the name of
something of gold.
Yeah. But I mean, these are kind of like, they're not huge box sets, but they're like not inexpensive deluxe editions. So
yeah,
it's a band that I need to learn more about, like you. But I say, more classic prog and surround is never a bad thing.
No, not at all. And Esoteric, Cherry Red are a wonderful label. I don't think I've ever bought anything from them that I was unhappy with. And they do wonderful work in terms of research and putting the materials together. Nektar, just to comment on them, to me, they're like a really good feeling progressive rock band who are not very complicated and they're very accessible. And a part of that comes down to the fact that their music is very riff based. And I mentioned Robin Trower earlier in this video when we were talking about the Richard Whittaker mix, and I could see Nektar fitting right in a collection next to Bridge of Sighs, because it's like very like riff based, melodic. Even though Remember the Future is 2 20-minute songs, there's like little song segments that kind of break into one another, sort of like Thick as a Brick or something like that. I really like them, especially Remember the Future. So I'm guessing that this is going to be a wonderful release, but just don't have time to hear everything, man. It's hard enough keeping up on what I already have. So we're going to do one more release for November 21st, and this wraps up the month. And that's Fly From Here, the return trip. And, you were kind of saying that you weren't very familiar with this material. I'm not either, although I have heard the original Fly From Here, and I heard it back when it came out. So I did a little bit of reading into what this is all about. And it's my understanding that for this record, Yes got a new singer. This was Benoit David. This is the only album he appeared on, only studio album he appeared on. And the original intention was to work with Oliver Wakeman, Rick Wakeman's son. John Anderson was booted out because he had an illness, which is unthinkable. So basically what happened was Oliver Wakeman was kind of booted out of it about halfway through, and they brought the Buggles guys back. Jeffrey Downs on keyboards and Trevor Horn, who was producing. I don't think he actually performed on the original version. So basically you have this quasi drama era lineup reforming, and the whole basis of it was this Fly From Here suite, or We Can Fly, or whatever it was called, that was written back in the drama sessions and apparently was actually recorded by the Buggles at one point. And in whatever this was, 2011, 2012, they basically redeveloped it, added to it, expanded it to a 20-minute piece. Now, 10 or so years later, they go back to create this return trip version, and Benoit David's out of the band now, and John Davison is the singer. And the decision is made when they're remixing the album to replace all of Benoit David's vocals with Trevor Horn. So now this version is the true successor to the drama album from back in 1980. That's a lot. But it's coming out. It's coming out in Dolby Atmos. And I checked, and I don't think the Atmos mix is on streaming yet. This is another mix by Richard Whittaker. So that's interesting to see this kind of hard rock guy move into more of a progressive album. But I don't plan to pick this up. My yes cutoff is kind of around 90125. So I don't really get into this era as much, but I'm sure there's a lot of people who are subscribed to me who are going to eat this up and are probably going to tell me that I'm making a mistake by not purchasing it. Maybe I am. So let me know. Let me know in the comments if I should get this.
My first thought was if only we could have the classic Yes stuff in standalone packages like this.
Hey, there you go.
But I think it's not on streaming yet just because the reissue hasn't come out yet. But I suspect it probably will be. I mean, it's a different label, but all the classic stuff, I think with the exception maybe of Fragile, has made it to streaming.
Interesting.
And like you, I kind of lose them after 90125. I do have the DVD audio version of Magnification, which I haven't listened to in years. But I remember that being like an okay, like later era Yes record. You know, that's still got John Anderson on it. And then the only other thing I guess I could briefly throw in is that the latest album that John Anderson made with his group called the Band Geeks has a streaming only Atmos mix that's quite good.
Yes.
And he's still in very good voice, John Anderson. So that would be a cool one to get a Blu-ray.
Yeah, I would probably be more interested in that personally, even though I love the drama album. And if they ever did a Atmos mix of the drama album, which I'm not sure. I'm guessing that the elements aren't available for that.
That's what they've been saying. Yeah.
But that would be a great candidate for a like a Steven Wilson, or even a Stephen W. Taylor to tackle. But yeah, I'm kind of a casual Yes fan. And to be honest with you, I've only sort of begun to appreciate the 70s albums with like in the past couple of years. So I know that they're going to do Topographic Oceans and they're going to do Relayer in Atmos. And I'm kind of hanging on to my money for that because I know that Yes does very well on the channel and people are very interested in them. So I don't know if I'll get this. So you folks who are viewing are going to have to let me know if I should, if you're interested in a review of it, and I'll consider it. But yeah, that wraps up the upcoming surround releases for November 2025. We will, of course, be doing December, which is, oh my God, what an exciting month that's going to be.
Oh, yeah.
Between Wish You Were Here and the Brian Ferry release. And what else is coming in December?
The New Order stuff.
And the New Order stuff. Yeah. Which I did see is available outside of SDE. You can actually get that like on Burning Shed.
Yeah, those are through Rhino, so it's like kind of the same series as like Blues for Allah and No Jacket Required.
Yeah,
I guess it's sort of vague to call that a series, but they're all from Rhino. But yeah, those mixes have been up on streaming since last year, and they're incredible. The Low Life album in particular has an amazing Atmos mix, so very excited to have that on Blu-ray and not as part of a huge box set.
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't ordered those yet, no pun intended, but I'll have to consider it because New Order, they're like an offshoot of Joy Division, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, and I love the first Joy Division album. I don't think I've heard anything else.
The first New Order album, which is one of the ones that is being released in Atmos, it's called Movement, is kind of like this transition where it feels more like Joy Division than the others. And I'm guessing you're going to be a big fan of that album if you like Joy Division.
That sounds like it's up my alley, unfortunately.
Like pretty dark. Yeah.
Oh man, you're talking me into it. You're dangerous, Jonathan. You're dangerous. Okay, so real quick, while I still got you on the horn, let's talk about our upcoming projects. We've got so many things that we're talking about doing. We're talking about doing a discussion on the Christopher Holt. We're going to do a discussion on your work on that. We're going to be reviewing Drums and Wires, the XTC Atmos mix from Steven Wilson, which is, oh my God, incredible. It's unbelievable. We're going to do Lizard and In the Wake of Poseidon from King Crimson. We're going to be talking about some Queen stuff soon because one of my viewers sent in a copy of Queen 1. I think he wants me to rip it apart. So I'm real interested in that. And then what else have we been talking about? Is there anything I'm forgetting?
Well, it's not for a while, but definitely Wish You Were Here is certainly now we're going to want to talk about at some point.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I think we talked about maybe doing like a Marillion video at some point.
Yep. So if you want to hear us talk about these multiple projects or any of the reviews I have coming up, like I'm probably going to do the Tears for Fears songs from the Big Chair album because I've got that on order. So that's coming up in the next month too. If you want to keep track of our reviews and anything in the future that Jonathan and I have planned, the best way to do that, of course, is by subscribing to the channel. Also, don't forget to like the video and leave us a comment. Which one of these are you most excited for? Which one would you like to see me review that I haven't already talked about reviewing? We'd love to hear from you and start a dialogue. But until then, I want to thank you, Jonathan, once again for joining me. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I'm going to see you again Monday, same time, for some XTC. So I'm looking forward to that.
Get excited.
All right, man. Thanks. And we'll talk real soon. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Catch you later.